Alright, thank you ladies and gentlemen for clicking on this video. That's right, we are still on Franchise Month, Week 3. Now, we've talked about the Universal horror films, the 8 original. We've talked about Friday the 13th, which is a good movie franchise. Now, it's time to talk about something more sci-fi, which we're going to stick with the sci-fi idea for the next 2 weeks. 3, actually. It's going to be 3 weeks. But this week, I'm going with one of the classics, and that is, of course, Star Trek. Now, Star Trek can be easily broken into 3 different categories when it comes to the movies. You have the original cast, which makes up the first 6 movies, the Next Generation, which takes up the next 4 movies, and finally the Reboot, which is the remaining 3 movies. So we're going to look at each one of these and kind of ask the same thing we asked with Friday the 13th, except instead of putting it on a calendar, we're just going to look at the good, the average, and the bad of each of these series. So, obviously, that means we got to start with the bad. 100% these are the worst movies in this series. So, from the original series, the bad are Star Trek, The Final Frontier, that is Part 5. You know, it's a weird plot. Spock has a brother, and his brother wants to meet God. That's the plot of this movie. Spock's brother wants to meet God, and the Enterprise crew gets finagled into it. William Shatner directed this one, and it's just not that good. The plot isn't really there. It's visually not that stunning. The cast is getting older, but I mean, they make one more movie, which is actually a very good installment of this series. It's a good one. It's not going to be in this list of the bad. So it becomes one of those things. It's hard to explain what's wrong with this movie other than everything. It's a bad plot. It's a bad idea. It's just not there. And it just makes the adventure very not interesting. You're not interested in what's going on in this Star Trek movie. Now, another bad one from the original series of movies, the other bad one, there are 2, is the motion picture. This is the first Star Trek movie released, and dear God, luckily they gave him a sequel. The motion picture, The Human Adventure is just beginning. I didn't read the tagline for The Final Frontier. Adventure. And imagination will meet at the final. Adventure and imagination will meet at the final frontier. Yeah, even that's not making me. But Star Trek the Motion Picture, it was the first Star Trek movie made on the heels of the success of Star Wars. So Star Wars was a huge hit, and sci-fi movies became big, so they decided to make Star Trek into a sci-fi movie, so we got the motion picture. The story is they find Voyager. Voyager is a satellite, kind of planety thing that is destroying things and is heading towards Earth. The Enterprise goes to find out what Voyager is. It kills and replicates a crew member. It's kind of a weird movie, because what ended up happening is they were going to do a second series. Star Trek had run its course, the original 3 seasons. They weren't starting on The Next Generation for years yet. It wasn't even an idea, but this was the original sequel series, and then they decided to make a movie. So basically everything that was there for the sequel series is what they used for this movie. And even, I believe the movie is even the plot of what was supposed to be the original, pilot of this new Star Trek series. So it's weird, and Leonard Nimoy is kind of shoehorned in because Spock wasn't going to be part of the new series, but when they turned it into a movie, Leonard Nimoy eventually said yes. He has a very, wishy-washy kind of relationship with the Star Trek films, which is weird that he's the actor in the vast majority of them. But yeah, it's not a great movie. It's got an interesting ending. I admit, I like the ending of the motion picture. It's what saves it. It's got some interesting shots. The sets are visually pleasing, because these are big studio sets. Most movies, you build what you need. For a TV show, you build a lot more because you need camera angles, and the camera's going to move a lot more, where in a movie, you're more precise. So these sets were much bigger, they were much more interesting in what the rooms were, and what they were supposed to be able to do for the TV show. So, set-wise, it's a very beautiful set. I just think it's kind of a clunky plot, and it brings it down. It really does bring it down in my esteem of where it stands among the Star Trek films. So let's move on to the Next Generation crew, and Did they have any bad movies? Well, the answer is yes, they did. It was called Star Trek Nemesis. No one's going to argue with me that this is not a bad movie. This is a bad movie. It's just a generation's final journey begins, and let me tell you, I wish they had a better final journey. I was a Next Generation kid, so that's the Star Trek I grew up with. I know I've got my original series is the box set I'm using, but I do have the Next Generation films box set. I have the Reboot box set. I own the original series on Blu-ray. I have the original series. The Next Generation series is sitting literally next to me on the floor, right here, because this is kind of a big DVD set I've had for a while. And this is where I keep it because I don't have shelf space for it. So I'm a Star Trek fan. I really am. And Nemesis, I saw this one in theaters. This was the first Star Trek movie I got to see in theaters. It was such a disappointing movie. It still is. You get the clone of Picard trying to take over because he needs something from Picard so he doesn't die. It's a hackneyed plot. It's just not there as far as Star Trek movies go. It's underwhelming, and I haven't watched the Picard series yet, and I do mean to. I just kind of hope what it takes from this movie is something decent from it and not all of the crap that really is there that makes up Star Trek Nemesis. So I guess that brings us to the Kelvin timeline, as it's called now, the Reboot series. And honestly, I'm going to be honest, we're moving on to the average, because of those three movies, none of them are bad. The new cast, the Reboot cast, didn't make any bad movies. They didn't make any, oh, why is that a Star Trek movie kind of moments. When you rank them against Final Frontier, Motion Picture, and Nemesis, you don't have anything that fits that mold of Star Trek. So, point for them, they made 3 movies and they were able to keep all of them out of bad. As you noticed, the original series had 6 movies and had 1 bad movie in each, in the first half and the second half of those 6 movies. And the 4 movies of the Next Generation they had a bad movie out of all of them. So we're moving on to the average. So what's average about these movies? What are the average Star Trek movies? They're not bad, they're not great. Well, the original cast brought us The Search for Spock. Some people would tell me this should go in the bad category. I actually like Search for Spock. I found it as an interesting film, and it really fits in very nicely with Voyage Home, with Wrath of Khan and Voyage Home. So you got 2 and 4. It fits in so nicely there. If you've never seen Search for Spock, definitely, if you're a Star Trek 2 fan and you like Star Trek 4, watch Search for Spock. It's pretty entertaining. Spock is on the planet Genesis, which was created at the end of Wrath of Khan. He is an infant who's growing up, and the planet is beginning to destroy itself, and Kirk finds out that Spock is still alive because McCoy has Spock's soul inside of him due to the Vulcan mind meld at the end of Wrath of Khan, and they steal the Enterprise to go and hunt down, go to the Genesis planet and rescue Spock, where Kirk's son and a Vulcan from the second movie are also on the planet doing research. And then you have a Klingon bird of prey that is also trying to claim dominance of the planet, with Christopher Lloyd, of all people, Christopher Lloyd, playing the head Klingon. It is a good time. It's a decent movie, and it's definitely, it belongs in the average. It belongs in the average category. Oh, a dying planet, a fight for the life. A fight for life. The Search for Spock. The title is literally in the tagline. So that's just something I wanted to point out. Alright, they do have another average movie, because the original series kind of breaks itself into 2 bad movies, 2 average films, and 2 good films. The other average film is Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. So 5 was a piece of dreck. 6 is average. It's not bad, really. It's got a decent plot. The Klingon homeworld kind of starts to break up, and now they are in need of aid. So we're finally going to get peace between the Federation and the Klingons. The Klingons are going to join the Federation, which will lead into the Next Generation stuff with Worf being part of Starfleet. So that's what this is. That's what this movie is about. It's about that peace. And since the greatest enemy in the original series are the Klingons, it's a fitting end for the original cast, is that it is the peace between the Klingon Empire and and Starfleet, the Federation. Along the way, you have a Klingon who doesn't want this to happen, so he's trying to sabotage the entire situation. And overall, it bears good performances from everyone who's in it. It has a good plot. It keeps you going. And definitely, it's worth checking out. The battle for peace has begun. That's its tagline. The battle for peace. It's not like peace. It's you got to fight for peace. And that's what this movie shows. So again, these are your average original series movies. They're not great. They're not bad. But they're definitely worth watching. You know, stomach through the motion picture. And eventually you'll hit, other than having to stomach through part 5, you'll be doing pretty good. Alright, what about the average from the Next Generation crew? What do we get there? Well, we get Star Trek Insurrection. Ta-da! The battle for paradise has begun. Okay, I didn't actually read these taglines before I started this video. So the fact that the battle for peace has begun, and now we're at the battle for paradise. Apparently, the battle for makes for average entertainment. A lot of people would say this should have been in the bad category, but it's not a bad movie. It's average. I mean, it's not great by any means if you compare it to the other Next Generation films. Compared to Nemesis, it's an amazing movie. But compared to the other ones, it's just kind of there. Basically, they find a world where people don't age. Because of the atmosphere, they have ceased to age. Starfleet is now in an alliance with another race who are looking to figure out why they no longer age and try to get that process for themselves. The Enterprise gets pulled into it because data malfunctions, and what was supposed to be a covert thing for Starfleet turns into a not-so-covert thing when data kind of freaks out. They go and they discover that this alien race that is trying to gain immortality from this other race are actually exiles from this planet. But not being on the planet has caused them to age rapidly. So they're now looking to reverse the process that they themselves were exiled into. It's an interesting movie. It's got a decent plot. You've got some great acting throughout from the cast. And again, if you're watching Star Trek movies, check it out. It's definitely worth the time and the effort to watch it. So that brings us to our Kelvin timeline movies. So what is average here? Now, we already have no bad entries in this one, so do they get away from the average? Are they all good movies? The answer is no. Because honestly, Star Trek Into Darkness, no. I have nothing on here for what its tagline was. This is the IMAX poster. Star Trek Into Darkness, although I found myself really interested in this movie when I first sat down with it, I just never... After rewatching it a couple of times, it's just kind of like, it's an average movie. You get Khan again, played by Benedict Cumberbatch, who does a great job. The performances are good in this movie, but the whole thing, it just, because it's kind of the Khan rehash story, it just kind of lays there. The best part is really that the Tribble saves the day. If you've never seen the movie, the Tribble saves the day. Just so we're all aware, Tribble save days. But it just kind of sits there. Basically, they haven't started their 7-year mission yet. They're about to be assigned to it, so the original series hasn't started yet. Starfleet gets attacked, it's Khan, and stuff happens. Khan! So it's a basic Khan story. Overall, like I said, it's kind of an average movie. I thought it would hold up better with time, but after a couple rewatches, it's not the great spectacle that I remember when I sat there at the midnight showing. And someone in the movie theater, one of the attendants, walked in before the movie started and told us to live free and die hard. That's right. They did this and said, live free and die hard. So, yeah. Alright, so given its point on this image, you kind of know there's another one. Because Star Trek Beyond is also kind of a blandish movie. It's not... Again, it's an average movie. It's not bad. It's well done. It's well acted. There's a plot. It's just, again, it's there. You watch it, you'll enjoy it. But it's not one you gotta go, man, I want to see the Star Trek movie again. It just doesn't happen that way. Again, Kirk, they're now on their 7-year mission. They end up going to a starbase, a new, like, super high-tech starbase. Somebody shows up with a distress signal, they go to check it out, the planet attacks them, and inevitably you learn a Starfleet crew has landed on a planet mutated and are now trying to destroy the rest of Starfleet because they were basically abandoned. again, it's not a bad movie. It's not a great movie either. It's just kind of there. It's an average Star Trek film. So, we've talked about the average. We've talked about the bad. Let's talk about the good. So the original series. What's good about it? Well, Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home. Stardate, 1986. How on earth can they save the future? This is a time travel movie. It's after Search for Spock. And let me tell you, this is a great film. I have always loved watching Star Trek IV. Basically, a large alien craft shows up above Earth, and it's disrupting communications, it's causing tidal waves, and it's sending out a signal. No one knows what it is. Eventually, someone figures it out that it's a whale call, but there are no whales left on Earth to make the call back. The Enterprise crew, who this image does show a bird of prey, because they are flying in a bird of prey. This is the only Star Trek movie where they are not on the Enterprise until the last minutes of the movie. The majority of this movie, they are on a bird of prey. It's the bird of prey they stole off of Christopher Lloyd in the previous movie, The Search for Spock. That's why you need Search for Spock. A lot of it comes through this movie. Pays off in this movie. They become exiles because they stole the Enterprise and destroyed the Enterprise. So they're on their way back to Earth when this happens, and they figure out it's a whale, so they decide to use their method of time travel, which is established in the original series, to go back in time to find a whale. So the majority of this movie takes place in 1986. It is the crew of the Enterprise there trying to locate and capture a whale. It is super entertaining. It is such a good movie. It's got the right amount of comedy going on. It's got the right amount of plot. It is so well done. However, Wrath of Khan, Star Trek II, is also a very good movie. I mean, at the end of the universe lies the beginning of vengeance. Khan! I'm sorry, I didn't want to go full force into a Khan, but I felt like I needed to Khan there for a minute. It's the Wrath of Khan. Even if you've never seen the episode Space Seed, which is where Khan first appears, dude, watch Wrath of Khan. It is a great movie. It is very well done. It is like the exact opposite of the motion picture in tone, directing. It is the polar opposite. Basically, Khan has been stranded on a planet with his people for decades, and they are found. He hijacks a ship and decides to take vengeance on Kirk. The best part of this entire movie is William Shatner and Ricardo Montalban, Captain Kirk, and Khan never actually meet face to face. They only talk through the view screen because T.J. Hooker and Mr. Rourke on Fantasy Island, their schedules never allowed them to be on set at the same time. So it is such a great hero-villain story with the hero and villain never in the same place at the same time. It is a great movie. It is far beyond one of the best Star Trek films they've made. And it is so good. So good. Alright, so that was good about the original series. Next Generation brought us First Contact. This is the movie where the Borg are the main villain. And it's another time travel movie. Apparently the time travel movies are really good. The new Reboot series should have learned that and did a time travel movie. They would have had less average films then. Because apparently time travel is good for Star Trek films. There's a battle with the Borg cube. A Borg sphere ends up traveling through time back to when First Contact was made. When Earth made First Contact with the Romulans. Enterprise follows suit, and basically you have two stories going on. You have Down on Earth, them making sure Zefram Cochrane makes First Contact when he's supposed to, and that the Borgs haven't destroyed that opportunity with their attack, and up on the Enterprise, where the Borg are now attacking the Enterprise. Because although the sphere has been destroyed, the Borg got on the Enterprise and are starting to assimilate it. So you get these two clashing stories. You have Data kind of up on the Enterprise being persuaded by the Borg because he is kind of he is a machine trying to be human, and the Borg try to persuade him that, the only way for him to do it is through the Borg. And you have Picard dealing with the fact that he was Locutus. So he was part of the Borg collective, and now he's not, and he's dealing with all of the emotions and ramifications of that. It is such a powerful and good movie. If you've never seen First Contact, check it out. It is so good. Resistance is futile. If you've never seen this movie, stop resisting it and go watch it. Alright, but Generations is also a great movie. Two captains, one destiny. This is the bridge movie between the original series and Next Generation, but it primarily features the Next Generation crew. Basically, there's a rift in time that rips a hole in a ship that Captain Kirk was on, and Kirk ends up in this spatial rift. We then jump to the Next Generation crew, who are sent to explore a damaged observatory, where they meet a crazy doctor who is trying to actually get inside of this rift. He spent a little bit of time in the rift back when Kirk fell into it, but he got pulled out of it before he could become part of it, so now he wants to get back to it, and he's willing to destroy planets and a solar system to get to what he wants. And so now it's Picard trying to stop him. He also has a few rogue Romulans. Klingons. He's got some rogue Klingons. The Mad Doctor has some rogue Klingons on his side as well, which do battle with the Enterprise in a fairly decent space battle. Eventually, Picard finds himself inside the rift, and the only way to stop our evil mad scientist is by enlisting Captain Kirk, and the two captains go to fight our Mad Doctor. It is a good movie. It is a fun movie. If you've never sat down to see it, definitely check it out. Star Trek Generations, it is a lot of fun with the series and with the movie. So, that brings us to the Kelvin timeline. And Star Trek, the first movie. It was good for being what it was. It kind of does fit that mold. I guess I said they should have done a time travel movie. They kind of did it with the first one, because they went back in time and rewrote the history of the rest of the series with one felt swoop of the pen. Because the future begins is its tagline. But yeah, that's kind of what they did, is they kind of erased the original timeline for this universe and moved forward from there. So things happen a little sooner, so people are a little younger. It's a good story. It's definitely worth, the rewatch value is there with this one. And you keep going, oh man, that is so good. Oh man, why couldn't they have kept doing movies like this? Because that's not how you make films. So now I've talked about the good, the bad, and the average. But how does this all rank out? Because I've talked about the movies, I put them in some category, but I haven't actually ranked all these Star Trek movies. And this is Rank the Movies. So here it is, really quick, my ranking. Star Trek V, The Final Frontier. Star Trek Nemesis. Star Trek The Motion Picture. Star Trek Beyond. Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. Star Trek Insurrection. Star Trek III, The Search for Spock. Star Trek Into Darkness. Star Trek. Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home. Star Trek First Contact. Now, that only leaves 2 and 1. My number 2 is The Wrath of Khan, leaving Generations to be my favorite Star Trek movie of them all. Now, again, this is my opinion on what I think is the best Star Trek movie. And what I think about any of these movies. You may have your own opinions. But that does do it for me talking about the Star Trek franchise. If you have any questions, please leave a comment. If you have any thoughts, leave a comment. Subscribe so you can see more of what I'm doing. And like, so I know you like this crap. Otherwise, I'll see you next week. We've gone off to the final frontier. And next time, we're going to go to a galaxy far, far away. See you then.